Yumahir Ahain. This happened 6 to 7 years ago when I was around 13 and still in school. Walking home one day, going through town, the weather was unbearable. Not like that nice sunny vibe sort of warmth, but that horrible bastard heat blanket type that suffocates the shit out of you. You know things are bad when the country you live in is so cold that anything above 15 Celsius is memorable. Anyway, I took off some of my school uniform, which consisted of a heavy wool blazer, long-sleeved grey jumper and a tie. This was a mandatory outfit living in Ireland and going to a grammar school. Heavy-ass coats that people been wearing since 1667 when the shit first opened. With just a short-sleeved shirt on, I headed about my merry way when this old man beckoned me to come over from across the street. He was about 60 or 70 from memory, with a little driving cap and a leather jacket on. Now, this is something that has landed me in trouble before. I cannot simply turn down a conversation. Regardless of when the local junkies approach me or clear red flag scenarios unfold, I always entertain the fucking thing unintentionally. So I walk over to this dude thinking, hey, maybe he just needs directions. First thing he asked is, do you want some sweets? And offered a Terry's chocolate orange. When I reached out to take a piece, he just held my hand, like straight up staring into my eyes, held my hand. Rubbing it slowly, he then asked, would you like to come back to my house for a cup of tea? Surely you must be tired and thirsty. Now, I know the sensible thing to do here was call for an adult, seeing as there was hundreds around. Belfast is a busy place. There are also police that often patrol the street. All I had to do was shout or make a scene. Instead, what came out of my mouth was, nah dude, that's kinda gay. Without any resistance, I released myself from his grip, took another piece of chocolate orange, and walked back over to my bus stop. Looking over my shoulder, he just stared at me, mouth open, and after a few seconds, hurried off around the corner. I realise now that the smart thing to do was report him, seeing as how this could have happened to anybody else my age, and the man could still be out there. This is the first time I've ever told this story, so nobody else knows about it. Although the immediate danger wasn't there, I think the implication warrants a mention. Nevertheless, chocolate orange possible child molester? Let's not meet. Yumahir Ajo. Okay, let me start off by saying that I'm not a street smart person, or I wasn't back several years ago when this occurred. I've always been pretty naive and trusting, sadly, which has landed me in some pretty crappy situations, but this one, by far, the scariest. So I had just recently gone through a really shitty, bitter, horrible breakup with my boyfriend and found myself living alone after he packed his bags and left. I didn't really know many people in the area and so tended to turn to the internet to pass the time. Long story short, I started chatting to a guy, let's call him John, and we started hitting it off, and it turned out he lived really near me. And by really near me, I mean like probably half an hour walk away. So we decided to meet up the next day and see how it went. I phoned my friend, let's call her Anne. Anne is infinitely wiser and more cynical than I, and told her what the plan was. She insisted she come with me as I didn't know this guy. He could be an axe murderer, blah blah blah. So the next day, Anne and I met with John at around lunchtime in a local pub. It was midsummer, so we sat outside in the beer garden. It was pretty busy despite it being lunchtime, and the place was right next to a busy road, so there was nothing to worry about, right? Well, we get some food and a beer, and we are all chatting, and it's going pretty well. We're hitting it off and having a laugh. We're taking turns to go to the bar to get around. I don't know if this is a term outside of England, where one person buys a drink for the whole group, then later the next person goes and does the same, so on and so on. So the day is turning into afternoon, which is turning into evening. The pub is filling up and we barely notice the time going by as we are having a good time, and we are filled with 5 or 6 beers by this time, so we are pretty tipsy too. So John goes to the bar to get his round in, and the next thing I know, I'm waking up the next morning in my own bed. My face is hurting and there is blood all over my sheets. I start freaking out at this point because I literally have no recollection of what the hell happened between 8 PM and waking up the next day. I don't know where the blood has come from, and I don't know why I'm hurting. So tentatively, I get up and take a look in the mirror. Now, my face is an absolute mess. I look like I've been in a fight and lost badly. I have a black eye, split lip, half of my face is just scraped and bruised. I felt sick. I was totally gobsmacked. What the hell happened? So I open my bedroom door to go to the bathroom when I see, out of the corner of my eye, John laying naked on my sofa. Now at this point, I'm just losing my mind and start yelling at him like crazy, demanding he tells me what the fuck is going on. He eventually calms me down and explains to me that I got out of my mind wasted the night before and I was embarrassing myself, slurring and stumbling all over the place, and eventually I fell over a picnic bench and hit my head pretty hard. Apparently I was bleeding and refusing help from anyone, so he called a cab and brought me home like an absolute knight in shining armour that he is. I didn't remember any of this, not one single moment. I had a million questions, but at the same time, I was utterly speechless. I know I'd had a few to drink, but it was no more than an average person would consume on a night out, and I had had many of those. Was it possible that I had just had one too many? I guess so. What other explanation was there? I just looked at John with my mouth open, head absolutely pounding, and eventually managed to muster, "I'm gonna be sick." So John looked after me that morning. He peppered the day with the odd tale of dumb things I'd done the night before, and how I must be so grateful because anything could have happened to me, and I never would have got back without him. I ate and got dressed, and by that afternoon I was feeling better. So he said he wanted to take me to his house and make me dinner, so we could resume our date. You know, from the point where I'd ruined it by getting blackout drunk. So I said yeah, sure. It was nice of him to still want to hang out after everything. Like I said, I am a naive twat. I really don't have much situational awareness at all. So we get to his house late in the afternoon, but when I say house, he lived in a static caravan, in a caravan park. I mean, it was nice enough inside, but I couldn't help but get a creepy vibe from it. It was tiny. The layout was, you open the front door into the living room, then further in you have the kitchen and dining area, then through a door into a tiny hall you have 2 small bedrooms and a small bathroom. And then after that there's a back door and a main bedroom. Now I'm sitting in the dining area while he's cooking and we are just genuinely making chit chat. I'm feeling pretty awkward now because I can still remember absolutely nothing of the night before, so it feels a little like there's already been a power shift, like he knows more about me than I'm aware of, and it's really uncomfy. I decided I would eat his food and then politely excuse myself home. I didn't know what I was thinking coming here in the first place. I'm a pretty go with the flow type person, but even I had started thinking, what am I even doing here? Just then, he asks how I'm feeling, and as I'm deep in thought, I don't even think about my reply. "I feel like I've been drugged," I said distractedly. Well, at this point, he just flips the fuck out. I mean, he's just going insane, saying, what am I accusing him of? And how dare I accuse him of the things, and I can't prove it, and I'm just trying to cause all sorts of problems for him, and he's on parole, so I'm basically sending him to jail with my lies. I had no idea that he was on parole. He would later tell me in his insane rambling texting sessions that he was arrested for domestic assault. Great. He starts literally getting stuff off the kitchen sides and just smashing them, throwing plates against the walls, pulled the toaster out of the socket and smashed that on the floor, just absolutely having a meltdown, whilst I'm sitting at this tiny caravan dining table like 5 feet away just thinking, what the fuck is even happening right now? I move to stand up and tell him that I think I'd better go, when he suddenly lunges at me and shoves me as hard as he can, and I'm on my knees and he's laying blows into me telling me I'm not going anywhere. He's between me and the front door at this point, and I can't see an escape route, so I turn heel and just run through the corridor with him chasing just inches behind me. I dive in the nearest door and slam it shut and sit with my back to it so he can't get in. I'm in the tiny spare room and there's no window that opens. I'm trapped there. He's outside pounding at the door and calling me every vile curse word in his vocabulary. I yell at him to go away and he stops banging. I hear him leave for a few moments, then all of a sudden, thump, thump, thump. He's trying to break down the door. I'm absolutely terrified at this point and pushing with all my weight back against the door as if my life depended on it, which I guess it did really. The thumping carries on for what seems like forever. Then I guess he got tired or something and I heard him go into the living room and start shuffling around. I still stayed backed against the door, sobbing for at least another hour. Eventually I hear the TV come on. He's actually sitting, chilling, watching some TV like nothing, whilst he's basically got a hostage cowering in his spare bedroom. I felt a flick of anger and adrenaline at this point, and I ever so slowly and quietly open the door and peer out. The hall is in darkness and the door to the living room is shut. I'm alone, but I'd have to walk past him to get to the front door. I'm desperately thinking of a way I can get out when I remember the back door. I creep over to it as silently as I could and prayed that it would have been unlocked. It was. I silently thanked every single god I could think of and crept out, shutting the door silently behind me. I crept down the steps and then just ran. Just ran and ran. Just sobbing and delirious and so fucking utterly confused. I had no idea where I was. It was pitch dark and I'd never been in this part of town before. I ran to the nearest payphone and used change in my pocket to call my friend to come pick me up. My bag and purse were still in John's caravan, along with some other personal possessions I just abandoned. My friend drove me home and I sobbed the whole way home. I never told him what had happened and he never asked. I just got home and went to bed and cried myself to sleep. The next morning, I wake up and find my phone that I've left at my home. It has about 50 text messages on it, mostly from John, telling me he's going to petrol bomb my house and kill my family, and if he ever saw me in the street, he would stab me to death, and he'd happily go to jail if it meant I was dead. I deleted them all. I was scared out of my mind. I just wanted it all to be over and to forget about him. I never really told anybody about what happened, not to the full extent anyway. As the days went by, I would get crazy rambling texts from him, one moment threatening to kill me and the next moment telling me he loves me and he's sorry. I deleted every single one as soon as I received them. They gradually got less frequent and I changed my number not long after, and I didn't hear from him again. I got in contact with Anne a while later. Turns out she has no memory from about 8 p.m. that night, and her boyfriend had an incoherent voice message from her just babbling and screaming and crying. He picked her up wandering bewildered around a nearby housing estate. I know we should have gone to the police. I know I should have told somebody. I know there is a million things I could have done, but I just wanted it to be over. It was the surrealest thing that has ever happened to me, and I still sometimes think back to it and wonder if it really happened, because it was just so insane. So, crazy psycho online date guy, let's not ever meet again. You may hear a tree. A quick background story. Seattle was initially crippled with traffic due to a semi-tanker that overturned in downtown Seattle, which closed the I-5 in both directions. To make traffic matters go from worse to unbearable, it had been snowing for most of the day, but snow is something we get every few years or so, which doesn't always go well with the locals. It all started with a massive line of people queuing for the buses to Seattle at 4 p.m, which usually isn't that bad, but it's Seattle. It's a city that freaks out the minute snowflakes start piling up on the streets. But admittedly, the sidewalks and the streets were full of slush that could have been packed down to ice. Several buses came by and loaded up with people filled to the brim. Naturally, people were growing impatient and jumped line to get on the buses. Finally, I wrangled my way on after 30 minutes of waiting, only to be stuck in traffic and only move 1 mile in 40 minutes. In the meantime, I decided to read a book to pass the time. But as time went on, I realised that the gentleman next to me became increasingly impatient. There were several moments of direct blank stares near my face while sitting restlessly, and he had been talking to seemingly invisible people. This man was one of the most interesting characters I've ever come across, and he dressed the part too. You can tell he's been through a lot and looks worn down, donning worn down leather hipster shoes complete with stained underwear for his socks. He wore seemingly new jeans as if he just walked out of Goodwill. His evergreen 90s sweater was worn backwards with a white lady's wool toboggan that had a tag sticking out. Then it struck me. He had been trying to talk to me and increasingly became more angry. I gestured that I was deaf, but he was clearly mentally unstable and he didn't seem to understand. He continued to drop things, and it seemed that his plastic bag already had a large hole that it couldn't contain his things. Gloves, food, and a handful of travel toiletries with a collection of other really old miscellaneous items that looked like it had been sitting in a trash can for a while. It looked like he had been carrying all of this stuff by hand. Out of nowhere, he pulls out a canister of Febreze air freshener that looks brand new and bangs it against the pole of the bus trying to drum. Seriously, I thought that thing was going to violently explode given the way he was banging that pole with nearly full force. The bangs shook the whole bus and I was there, sitting right next to him. In between his drumming breaks, he would offer his Febreze canister to random people. After a rough drumming session, he finally dropped the can and it disappeared into the void under my seat. After my I'm deaf gesture, I didn't want to make any rash movements to cause any incident, so to defuse the situation, I decided to stand up to give him more physical space so he can breathe a bit better. Perhaps he's claustrophobic, I thought to myself, but it's not my place to assume and judge. I only was hoping to make it a safer situation for everyone, because you will never know what will happen if you provoke someone who can't think clearly. My colleagues who were riding the bus with me weren't as empathetic. They returned blank stares, whispered to each other, and smiled while staring back at this gentleman, which made the ride a lot more stressful. Out of the blue, this man screamed to the people who were crossing the 520 bridge and often berated me behind my back at the top of his lungs. Pointing fingers at people, he continued to drop F-bombs and yell at his passed-out female homeless friend who occupied the seat in front of us. There was a moment when I thought he'd finally calm down, but I was wrong. He opens a brand new hand sanitizer, takes a few sips, and swallowed. Then he followed that up with a swig of Listerine and then continued to scream at people. The more it went on, the more I was worried for everyone's safety. He continued to make eye contact with a particular gentleman and showed threatening behaviour, but thankfully the bus finally arrived to my next bus stop. After getting off, I couldn't help myself and felt relieved. But then I got to thinking. We truly live in a very diverse world, and I'm thankful for this experience, even though it could have ended badly. I think this man has some severe form of schizophrenia, which from what I understand is common among Seattle's homeless population. In fact, Google tells me that approximately 200,000 individuals with schizophrenia or manic depressive illness are homeless, consisting 1/3 of approximately 600,000 homeless populations. Total homeless population statistics based on data from Department of Health and Human Services. This fact alone makes me wish we as a society could put our differences aside and accept responsibility to provide for all kinds of people. Instead of wishing for such a lofty goal, let's do what we can do. We can kill people with a combination of love, respect, and kindness, no matter what kind of struggle they may be dealing with in their lives. Edit. There isn't one. Okay, fine. Homeless dude I sat next to went cocoa, and I had a life learning experience. The end. Yumihir Akahar. I'll start with the actual incident that applies to the forum. Me, 42 divorced, single mum at the time. My 12-year-old son stayed home from school because he was sick. I had just started a new job and I was the boss, so I had to go to work. My son assured me he was fine staying home alone. During the day, I had an unexpected opportunity to go home to check on my son. Without a lot of time to do so, I left in a hurry, leaving my cell phone behind. When I got to my house, my ex-husband's truck was in the driveway. I stopped dead in my tracks. The bulk of the story is about why I stopped dead in my tracks. Going back in time to my other son's 9th birthday party, I had been going through personal therapy and marriage therapy. When I became well aware of the psychotic emotional abuse my husband treated me with, I decided to divorce. Of course, he did not like that. He was constantly trying to prove to me how I should stay with him. We were still married, but the end was near. So when all the kids and adults at the bowling alley party were watching my husband cut the cake, in his effort to prove that I should stay with him, my husband put the knife up to his throat and imitated slicing his throat with a creepy as shit sinister grin, mouthing the words, "You're next." Had my friends not witnessed it too, I wouldn't have believed my eyes. Just a couple of months later, this child had a birthday party at home. While all the 10-year-olds were singing happy birthday, my husband, instead of singing the words, sang, "Your mother's a slut, there's no one she wouldn't do, she looks like a skank and smells like one too." Note, I had never had an affair. Not that it matters, it's still fucking psycho. Time went on, and I was waiting for my lawyer to have time to file for our divorce, and I was looking for housing and a job. Meanwhile, I knew I was in a dire situation. Most spouse killings are within the time of leaving. So I was half pretending I was still working on the marriage, as the world around me crumbled and became a 24/7 mind-bending destruction of my safety at home. Did you know that causing sleep deprivation is a documented method of abuse? He would talk, constantly talk, 24/7 talk to me about why I can't leave. One night I left the bedroom, He begged me to come back and he would leave the bedroom so I could sleep. Okay, fine. I locked the door. He knocked incessantly for 10 minutes just to come in and keep talking. I finally got him to leave the room, only to have that scenario repeat 3 more times. Before I knew it, it was time to get up and get the kids to school. All the while, he slept soundly and didn't go to work. Sex had stopped because I just couldn't. I don't think that needs any explanation. Yet, he would jerk off in front of me. I'm in the shower, I get out and there he is, cranking his wank in front of the shower. Fucking disgusting. He got super drunk, came home, and tried to rape me. Thank God he puked, or he might have succeeded. My mother called one Sunday morning, and he's relentlessly groping me until I leave the room. There was a time I was making dinner and he wouldn't let me out of the kitchen. What he was doing was trying to get me to physically brush past him so he had the excuse that I hit him first. I knew that, so I stayed put. After about an hour of this, I realised the house phone was right there, so I called 911 for assistance. Another 45 minutes later, the cops finally arrived, but not before he grabbed the phone from me and convinced the cops I was having a psychotic episode. Cops said someone should leave. I volunteered and begged the cops to assure me that they would monitor the home to make sure he didn't hurt the kids. I really didn't think he would hurt the kids. He never was physically abusive. A pussy, really. I would never leave my kids in danger. He was clearly consumed with just fucking with my mind. I stayed at a friend's and went back the next day and took the kids to church with me. Other things he did. I started to record our interactions. Yeah, to possibly use his abuse in my favour for divorce, but also to replay to myself to assure myself that I wasn't nuts. This was really happening. He really says this psycho shit to me. He figured that out. So then he would only say his fucked up shit when I was vacuuming, because the sound of the vacuum drowns out his words. He would always wait until my back was turned. He would just bump up next to me, sometimes with a hard-on, no joke, and say shit like, "I'm going to fuck your world if you leave me. Do you hear me? I'm going to tell everyone how you're putting your hands down our son's pants and making out with them after bedtime stories." What the fuck? I'm a good mother. Honestly, it took me 2 years of specific PTSD treatment to vacuum a room in my house when I finally moved out. Last, my son, the one homesick, told me a story of when he said the F word just a month after I left, and his dad picked him up by the throat, lifting him up off the ground and bitch slapped him 3 times in front of my ex's new girlfriend and her daughters because you don't talk shit like that in front of ladies. Mind you, the lady was the ex-friend in a hurry I went to stay with when I called the cops the night he wouldn't let me out of the kitchen. Yeah, my good friend was fucking my husband. The husband who sang that I was a cheating slut during the birthday party. I mean, what the fuck? I cannot make this shit up. I succeeded in getting a TRO for harassment, but that expired. Shortly after that time, after I moved out but before the divorce was final, he came to the house for visitation exchange. He unloaded his truck with all the water skis I bought for the kids. I'm like, wait, I bought those water skis after I left for use at my house for the kids. How and why the hell does he have them? He's throwing a brand new skis onto the black top driveway. I was outside and scared as shit, so I went into my garage. He followed me. I shut the automatic door. Instead of stop the door and escape, he kicked it off the rails and broke it. I locked my door and called 911. They wouldn't do a fucking thing because we weren't final divorced yet, and I used marital assets to buy my house. He was legally the homeowner and he broke his own garage door. What the actual fuck? I had evidence that he had already broken into my home and stole the skis. Now, just because he's returning them, he gets away with all that shit. Oh my god, I've never been so pissed in my entire life. Eventually, I filed for another restraining order that he was denied by his senile judge. But he did order that he can't come into my home. Ever. So, back to the original story. I stopped dead in my tracks. Do I go in my own house knowing he's inside? But he's inside. Mind over matter. Don't freak out. Just go into the home and make sure your kid is okay. Shit. I have no phone. I live in the sticks. No one is around. What if he's hurting my kid? What if he's just checking on him? Snap decision. Go into my home and find out what the fuck is going on. At least for sure he violated the judge's orders to stay out of my house. As soon as I get to the front door, it opens up. He's shocked I'm there. Funny, isn't it? He says, "What the fuck are you doing here?" I said, "I live here. You're not supposed to be inside my home." He yelled, "I fucking hate you. I'm going to fucking kill you." And then he ran to his truck. Holy shit. I ran in, locked the door. Is he going to get his gun out of the truck? What did he do in here? Where is my kid? Okay, good. Kid is fine. Said his dad stopped by to check on him. Then pounding on the door. More threats. Eventually, he left. I don't have a house phone, so I was assured by my son that he was fine and Dad was just checking on him and was nice so I could go back to work. I went back to work just to tell him I wasn't coming back to work and just went back home. Quick conclusion. Police were notified. X got charged with disorderly conduct, pleaded no consent so long as the domestic abuse enhancer was dropped, ironically, because this was nothing other than domestic abuse, and got 1 year probation, permanent no contact order, anger management class, and monthly check-in with a counsellor. He has since, for the most part, left me alone. Not sure if this will get removed because it's all bizarre accounts of my emotionally abusive ex-husband, but I'll give it a shot in hopes that someone in the same situation gets the help I got. Hello to everyone listening, this is your favourite god of death. I got back to my usual recording equipment, so this hopefully sounds a bit better listening to and doesn't sound as crackly or just painful to listen to. I know I'm not very well known yet, and I do really enjoy making these videos. I enjoy listening to the stories, the incredible things that people have gone through and overcome, and it's just wonderful being able to do this. So if you could subscribe if you haven't already, if you could share the word, comment, like, do all the wonderful things that give me all kinds of pleasures. Sounds much weirder than it should, but I assure you it's a very good thing. Nothing really to do with this channel, but I am going to start a video about some books with my friend Erin Curran. She does reviews of books. Well, no, she does reviews of shows, and she's going to do reviews of books. But my wonderfully tantalising voice shall be there. Her wonderfully tantalising face shall be there, and I'm sure you don't want to miss out on that. And we will be reviewing the Mortal Instrument books, so fan or not, it's still going to be fun to watch us rip them apart. And definitely check out her channel. She's much more popular than I am and has very good insights and is very good at debating when it comes to her opinion and other people's opinions. So check out her work, check out my work, subscribe, share us to the world, and please don't forget. I've forgotten. Well, just remember one thing. Hell is empty and all the devils are here.